Hi everyone, welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher, a show where a comedian talks to his yoga teacher about whatever we want really, but it's usually yoga/meditation related, but it's hopefully accessible enough that if you don't practice either of those things, you still enjoy it. This week we mainly talk about the topic of free will, which is an enormous subject, and to do it justice, it would probably have to be a 4-hour discussion, and we would have to be replaced by academics. There could have been so many follow-up questions and tangents that we could have gone down, so it's really scratching the surface. But the thing is interesting, and I hope you enjoy it. See you on the other side. Here comes the show.
So I've said I would cover a yoga class later this evening, so I'm working 5 to 7.
Well, that's good. More work.
Yeah, it's good. She actually messaged and said, "Do you teach Pilates?" I said, "No." And then I said, "But I can teach a core-focused yoga class if you want." And she went, "That'd be great. Thank you."
Pilates is a new word, isn't it, really? If you had a phone 10 years ago and you tried to type Pilates into it, it'd probably come up pirates or something, wouldn't it? So you end up thinking, I can't teach a pirates class. What do you...
Exactly, yeah. A lot of people think Pilates and yoga are very similar, but they might be similar styles of movement, but to be honest, Pilates more stems from yoga than that vice versa, because yoga is older. But Pilates was invented in 1937 by a doctor who wanted to help people with back pain and problems mostly with their back, because of weak core muscles from sitting around all the time. So he invented, in a sense, a lot of different types of exercises to try to strengthen through the core to help support you and make you healthier. So it is really good for you. It's just I've not been trained in it specifically, but it's very similar to what we would do in a core-focused yoga class.
So you're well qualified to teach it, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's like when I get asked to do gigs for, I don't know, corporate gigs or something. It's the same thing. It's just you tailor it, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done kids comedy as well once. I think it was. No, it's not for me. I struggle to talk to children anyway. So to know what I'm not tuned into what they want really. So the sort of thing I do. I don't think anyone would ever watch my regular set and think, he could really make that work for kids. I only did 5 to 10 minutes. It felt like half an hour. And they just run around the room and... actually, I lie there. The gig was for the parents and mothers, and mothers and fathers. Because the dads are involved now these days, aren't they? With parenting. but,
these days, still in the last 100 years.
Since the war. Whatever. Yeah, so they it was for the parents, but it was a toddlers group thing, and so the kids were just running around, and one of them knocked the microphone stand over, and so there's havoc going on around you. So you're just ploughing on, basically. If a child runs into you and grabs your leg, you're like, let's pretend that didn't happen, or so I've done 2. I've done one to kids with the parents at the back, but it was for the kids, and one for the parents where the kids were just running amok. That
sounds really hard.
Yeah, it was a bit distracting. I mean, you wouldn't do a yoga class with kids running around the front, would you?
I know. I mean, I know that I'd encourage everyone to try it, even if you have kids running around. It would be a little bit of a different experience for you, but that doesn't mean you can't practice still. But I do think that as a teacher, I don't think I could teach if there were children running around me and the people, and I think I would just be so distracted that I'd be like, what? But I'm happy for kids to be in the Zoom meetings and running around the students. That's fine, because they're not running around me.
Weirdly, actually, I did a joke at the kids gig that has only worked at a kids gig.
Oh, yeah.
And it never worked in an adult's gig. And I've just found it. So do you want to hear the joke?
Yeah.
Okay, this was the 21st of April, 2013.
Oh, wow.
So, I've obviously not got any better at writing jokes since then. So, the joke is, a lot of people are very scared of spiders. But the thing is, with spiders is, you're only actually 6 feet away from looking like one. Because, if you had 6 more feet, you look like a spider. Yeah.
There you go. That's for kids.
Yeah, kids and you. Evidently, there's a Zen diagram, not a Venn diagram.
Yeah,
a Zen diagram is probably something you studied. I don't know. Nothing else has happened with me apart from I got rid of all my CDs, which you might be pleased to hear.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You threw them away?
No, I went on a website which buys them.
Wow.
But they only pay, like, on average, they give you 4p a CD. But some of them, they give you, like, nearly 50p, and some of them they give you a penny. So it's sort of averaged down.
What do they buy them for?
So I sold 275 items.
Wow.
For £80.33.
Did you rip them first, or did you save the...
Oh, yeah, it's all... I've got everything's on digital. Like, I kept about 10 limited edition CDs with nice booklets in them that are mainly Bob Dylan stuff, but, you know, I thought you'd be proud of that. Cause, like,
that is really good. Yeah.
It's so weird, like, not to champion my music taste or anything like that, but I'm looking, as I'm putting these things in, and you remember how much you bought them for, and if they had any sentimental attachment. Like the first two Oasis albums were like the first two things that I loved when I was 10 years old. They were the first, like, I didn't even love my family like I loved those. Like, I love those two albums. Because obviously you're obliged to love your family. You're told from a very young age, you love us, right? So you're like, oh, I guess I must do. But I think that was my first choice. We might talk about choice shortly if we talk about free will. But I stumbled across them, and they were the first things I ended up, like, actively loving as my own. And so I now got rid of them for about 3p each. Like,
oh, it's hard when you have to get rid of things, especially things from your childhood that you really did like. It is difficult to be like, oh, but I liked it. It's from my childhood. It means something to me. And anything with sentimental value, you know.
I made peace with it. It wasn't a heart-wrenching thing to get rid of them, but it was like, it's just bizarre. You think, Blood on the Tracks, probably the best album, like my favourite album of all time, probably, so therefore the best album of all time. 7p for Blood on the Tracks. Are you mad? Like, that's all that's new with me. So, anything new with you? Move on then, right? Okay. Do you want to talk about the idea of free will or not?
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Okay, so do you have any opinions on it at all? I mean, do you want to, like, what do you think? I mean, what do you think it is, or what do you think? Have you thought about it before? Or?
Well, I think, like, if you think of, like, the idea of free will, I suppose that makes you think you have a choice. But then there is, like, certain things we don't have choices over, which connects maybe to, some of the niyamas and things like that. You have things that you have no control over, which could translate as no choice, if that makes sense. You don't have a choice over a lot of things in your life, just like you wouldn't have control over a lot of things in your life. So, yeah, we have free will to some extent, but then on the other side, maybe we don't, because we live in a consumeristic world where we have to work and make money so that we can eat and live. And for the most part, it would be very hard to come out of that system. Might even say nearly impossible. I mean, the people that do make it into magazines, the man who lived without money for a year, and he's in a camper van in a friend's field and a farm, and it's like...
I need some advice from him.
But, like, they make it into magazines because it's so rare. Not necessarily because people don't want to do it, but because it is hard to do, to try and come away from that. So then how much choice do we really have? And then that's just on, like, a literal big plane. That's not even talking about the small things, like in your mental habits and stuff. Go on, you go.
Okay, so I worry that I'm going to come across like a Sood talking about these things, because, I'm not qualified. I'm not like a philosopher. Or the first time I was ever introduced to this idea was, there's a comedian called Dave Longley, who I'm fairly good friends with, and he's a very smart man, but his humour is very dirty. He writes clever dick jokes, basically. So
okay.
Anyway, I saw his Edinburgh show in about 2012, and we had a coffee afterwards, and for some reason, very early on in our conversation, he asked me if I believed in a deterministic universe, and I thought, that's a bold opening gambit to be asking someone, because I hadn't ever really thought about that.
How would you even define that, though? Like what would you say that means?
A deterministic universe would mean that everything is predetermined to happen, and since the start of the universe and chain of events has taken place which you are just subject to.
Right.
You don't have control over changing the future because it's predetermined to happen to you, and any choice you make has been predetermined by genetics and other choices and other things that have happened before. I feel like we have a lot more limited choice and control over choice than perhaps I would have thought before I thought about these ideas. The reason it ties into meditation and those ideas is that when you realise that you're not in control of what you're thinking, then how much choice do you have over what what you choose to do? Because you're not in control of the next thought that comes into your head. Even if someone says think of pick a band, then you're like, oh, okay, Oasis. Why is that coming to my head? It's because I mentioned the CD earlier on, so it's fresh into my head. But I didn't choose to have that band name come into my head. It just happened. And so how much choice did I have? Yeah,
but would you not say that you have choice? I mean, this kind of goes back to some of the basis of certain hypnosis and stuff. You have no choice about the thought that comes into your head, but you do have a choice of the sound that comes out of your mouth. So you could be like, oh, what band? And then your head goes Oasis, and you go, well, I was just talking about that, so I'm not going to say that. And then you go, S Club 7. Oh, wait, that was worse. And then, and then you just
I didn't have one of those to give away.
But you know what I mean? You have maybe, in my mind, I would say that you have a choice.
Why did you make that choice? Because you want to be somewhat contrarian and were you in control of the reason why you changed your conscious mind on that? I'm not being an absolutist about it. I'm not saying there are arguments to say that you have pretty much no control and that what we think are free choices are completely predetermined by events, genetics, other things that have happened in our life, other people, current environment, everything.
Yeah, so everything that has happened to us and everything that is happening to us is determining our choice for right now and slowly going into the future. And every choice we make then goes into the program of what choice you're about to make. So you become predictable.
Yeah.
And then you kind of wonder that if that predictability is so set in stone that you could just literally predict everything and nothing would change and you're really not actually making any free will choices because everything is connected.
Yeah. When I got asked, do I believe in a deterministic universe and stuff, I was thinking, well, what's the point? What does it matter? Why is it something that we need to think about? But I recently listened to a talk on free will, which I've kind of agree with about how... So the idea is that you believe that someone making a choice is accountable for that decision. So if you believe that there is no free will or very little free will, you can hold an individual much less personally accountable for the decisions that they make, which actually makes you, if you believe that, it can make you a much more forgiving person of other people.
Yes.
So if someone wrongs you, you assume that they have taken a conscious effort to wrong you, and you will hold that person completely accountable for that and maybe feel vengeful towards them. But if you believe that they are less accountable personally for their actions, then you've no need to hate them. I mean, you don't have to hang around them. You don't have to be friends.
Of course.
And that's a positive reason to not believing so much, at least in the idea of free will.
That's very connected to what I've read and studied around some Buddhist beliefs and texts. Obviously, as with any large religion, there'll be lots of different sects in different areas. But one of the ideas is to use every experience as, a learning experience or an experience for growth. Specifically with certain parts of Buddhism, they might think that every negative experience, something that might be quite uncomfortable, is a chance to get rid of some negative karma that you may have accumulated. So, say if you're walking in the street and you almost step out in front of a cyclist and then you back up and then they shout a horrible, mean thing at you. And you might be like, oh, it was an accident, blooming heck, and you kind of feel really bad because you got a fright because you almost got run over. They got a fright because they almost squashed you with their bike. And you both feel bad. But instead of just reacting right away and shouting something mean back, you don't. That's a chance to release a little bit of negative karma. But one of the points of that is that if you are consciously trying to be a better person, in a sense, for an easy phrase there, that everyone, not necessarily everyone, but this idea that maybe other people aren't, necessarily, which isn't necessarily bad or good. It's just, maybe facts or whatever. There's this mindset that I've read about and that they try to encourage is if you were with someone in a hospital and they were on some drugs, on some strong morphine or something like that, if a doctor went to help that person and then that person was so drugged up on painkillers and stuff that they didn't know what they were doing and they were screaming and they were shouting, maybe they even tried to bite the doctor or something ridiculous, the doctor wouldn't be like, oh my God, I'm not treating this person, he's horrible. They'd just be like, oh, well, he's drugged up, so he doesn't know what he's doing. I'm just going to ignore that and try and keep going. And it's that same idea, that this idea that it's a disease, that they're not well, and that they don't actually have control over themselves. And that if you were to imagine everyone is having this kind of like, this idea of not having this control over themselves, of being this little bit ill, and you come across every person that you ever meet with that idea that they don't actually have control over themselves, but that's okay, then it takes a weight off you, because you're like, oh, well, I don't, just like a doctor would with a sick patient. You don't think,
so you're saying the human condition's a disease, then.
Basically.
Yeah.
But, treating everyone as if they're having, this illness or a problem, or they're, on painkillers and they can't control themselves. This idea, basically, you wouldn't take it personally. You would react. You would, change what you're doing. You're not going to put your hand near that person's mouth who just tried to bite you if they're, or something like that. You would react and you would change. But you wouldn't be like, oh, that person is trying to hurt me. You would just be like, that is just their nature.
Because it's not all about you, is it? Obviously. So you don't have to think that, you have to think that everything everyone does in the universe is because they want to show you up or something.
Exactly.
Everyone's got things going on. It's like when they tell you to write screenplays or something, they say you should love all of your characters, even the bad ones. So you should understand why, if you write a negative character, you should understand why they are negative. It's like, why is that person an arsehole? I've got to empathise with why they're an arsehole. It doesn't mean that I'm going to ask them to move in, but you have to understand why people are... Yeah. So I'm quite forgiving of people, but I don't have any friends. so what's going on there?
Well, I suppose the idea of writing characters, that's actually one of the reasons why I really enjoyed some of the old Batman stories, because all the bad guys were made bad guys.
Yeah.
They weren't just like, oh, isn't he a bad guy? They went through some traumatic, horrible events, and then they were like taking action on that. They became evil because of what happened to them. And I really like that aspect. I mean, hopefully that never happens in real life, but you know what I mean? Like you're saying, that idea of understanding and maybe even empathizing with the bad people in your story or whatever. I really like that. But I suppose on the overall large picture, as in from like creation of the universe, Big Bang to now, I would say that I probably don't think everything is predetermined. I think that you can make a logarithm of what's most likely to happen and predict things and try and figure out what's going to happen in the future and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily think that if it were all to happen again, it would be exactly the same.
Why do you think that? I'm not challenging like her.
No.
I'm not like, well, where's your proof? Come on.
Come on, show me a new universe.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I think the reason why that I said that was simply because all of the things that have to happen from just a point of view of like science, them working out in the exact same way so that we don't come out lizard people instead of monkey-based people. Even just something as simple as that. Like, it's just very unlikely to happen, let alone happen so exactly that every single human that exists would exist again. You know what I mean? What's to say that the egg would go 1 month and then you get pregnant the next month and you get a different baby to the baby that you would have had the month before? Like, there's just so much chance involved with everything that it's just really, I really just don't think, I don't see it happening without some sort of, not divine intervention, but, some sort of like pre-planned thing, like unless we're in like a proper cyclical weird kind of universe where everything is always repeating constantly, which I mean, you would never prove that in any way, but unless there's that kind of notion behind it in just a scientifical terms, or that's not a word, but you know what I mean. I just don't see that it would ever happen like that again.
So you're using your status as someone that is more qualified in science than me to shut me down.
I don't even have a qualification yet. Well, okay, so my proof would be like the statistical chance of actually evolving in the first place to a sentient being is extremely low.
Right.
Which is why it took millions and millions of years to do anything, let alone evolve to the state that we have now. So that happening again, and then all of those tiny little bits, because you know how evolution works. Every time you have macroevolution and microevolution. So microevolution are tiny little changes like we see in bird beaks and stuff like that. Like Darwin noticed bird beaks change over time in his own lifetime so that they could better open nuts or whatever they were eating. So those are tiny little changes. But if you take those tiny little changes and you watch them over an extremely long period of time, you would notice large changes, which is how people have changed to be human in the first place, in a sense. And I think that those tiny little changes, because they're so small and they happen on such small scales, those would not repeat themselves as specifically as they have now. That's what I think. So then you would end up with something different in the long run.
In an evolution, and again, I'm going to carry over. I'm thinking out loud. I know what I'm talking about here. But all these little evolutionary things are down to the fact that you are evolving to the environment that you have.
Indeed.
So if we have evolved into sentient human beings, then perhaps that is an inevitability because of the fact that the science of the Big Bang creation of the universe and stuff has given us the environment where it would always have happened. That's an argument, potentially.
But that's not saying that you couldn't have evolved on a planet that had less gravity, and then we would look completely different.
Yeah, but we are here. So what would you mean, like a planet? You say a planet would perhaps not have so much gravity if it all started again, or
like if a smaller planet was able to hold on to its atmosphere, you might end up with different style lungs to breathe a thinner atmosphere. You might end up with, if it was a smaller planet, it might have less gravity, so then you would end up with a different shape of skeleton or different makeup in that way, so that you were evolved to be on that planet, if that makes sense. And so there's no chance that what I was thinking is, what's the chance of the exact same planet like ours evolving? I mean, our planet is mostly water. What's the chance of that happening again? Water is actually not a very common element as a liquid like that. That's very rare. So then trying to get the ice and everything to come about so that we have a mostly water planet is another kind of niche thing that you would have to have, let alone the fact that it would also have to be in the right place in the galaxy and in the right place in the solar system so that you could have that stability for an extended period of time to be able to evolve in the first place.
Okay, well, I'm not going to argue with that. If the planet was different, if the planet was different, then there'd be drastically different outcomes to the life that would evolve on it and create. Yeah, completely. Then it is not determined that I'm going to meet you in a yoga class one day and, and all that. But if we had exactly the same conditions every time, then perhaps we would have exactly the same. So so perhaps that's too far back in time to be saying, like, you could still say that our lives are deterministic, but maybe not the universe at large, perhaps. Maybe.
I would agree with that.
Okay, that makes more... Yeah. Oh, good, we got somewhere there. What agency of control do you have over the choices that you are making today? Because if they're the choices that you were going to make, and it's absolutely true that you sort of slowly, incrementally change yourself, but it's like, are you ever pulling the trigger on that decision? Like, because I was thinking, it might be a silly example, but on a weekday, I'll either have porridge or muesli.
Yeah, we know this. Is this episode 1?
Episode... No, I didn't mention it that early.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's about 3 or 4, I think. But
yes, we all know that you have set meals for breakfast every day of the week.
So here's another thing you said. You said that you're not talking about our lives here. I guess you might be talking about the cosmos, but you're saying that you could map the probability of things. So by that, are you almost sort of saying that if something had a 70% chance of happening, then in 70% of scenarios it does happen, and in 30% of scenarios the other thing happens? So when the American election in 2016, they said Trump had a 30% chance of winning. And so does that mean that we happen to live in the 30% of universes from that point where he did win and 70% of them went to Hillary Clinton? or whether it was just always going to be the 30% thing. If you'd have mapped things properly, you had the correct information, you would make a different probability. It wouldn't be probability, it'd be certainty, because it was always certain to have that less likely outcome. That makes sense.
So you're saying that like probabilities, we can't possibly know. We can't possibly actually really understand every single thing. So So really, if you knew enough information, you would always be, your probabilities would always be right. Or
so ignore the probabilities. I mean, I know that's the way our minds work a little bit, because then we say, "Oh, it was always going to win. It was always like going to happen. I knew it was going to happen years ago." That stuff. But so it kind of links to my porridge thing. So on a hot day, I'm more likely to have muesli than I am porridge. Okay, makes sense, doesn't it? And as a probability judgment, I'm more likely to, right? But sometimes I might wake up and go, "Sod this! I'm having Weetabix," right? Up yours, the universe. I'm having Weetabix today. Now, to my sort of conscious mind, that is a free will choice where I have said, sod the rules, Weetabix it is. Right? I don't care. So I'm a rebel, okay? But I reckon if you had the information, somehow you could quantify my previous choices, how many days in a row I'd had some, like, there's got to be a breaking point where at some point I'm not going to want to have porridge or music because it's boring. So I reckon you could know, if you could map out my thoughts and my environment, I reckon you'd be able to tell the day when I decided to have Weetabix instead of porridge or music. So was it free will that I decided not to have my usual breakfast that day, or was I just conscious of it later?
But do you not think that is what free will is, though? Because we're just, in a sense, biological computers. Like, eventually we're going to follow patterns, and we enjoy patterns, we like predictable things, and one day we're going to be, fed up with something that's very similar, and we'll have to change. But is that not...
It's just a thought experiment in some ways. Because before I knew about the idea, I would say that I had complete control over what I had for breakfast. But I don't. I don't think necessarily, or not as much. Like, if tomorrow I say I'm not even going to have Weetabix, I'm going to have toast. Like, I reckon you could probably tell I was going to do that if you knew everything,
I can understand what you're saying. Like, if you're so predictable, if it's possible to eventually predict everything, does it stop being free will?
Yeah. You must do things. Please tell me it's not just me. You must do things and not really know why you did it. Like, sometimes I might throw something out, or like just tidy something or move something, and then I'll get asked, why did you do that? And I don't know. I don't know. I just did it. I must have a reason for it, but I didn't consciously think I'm going to do this. Like, I just...
That's kind of like when you leave the house, or when you go for a walk, or when you go upstairs or something, and you think, did I turn the stove off? Did I turn the oven off? Did I turn the lights off? I probably did, because you do stuff like that on autopilot, and then you don't really, like you're saying, it's the same kind of idea where sometimes you might do something and then you don't. It's more autopilot than actual conscious decision to do something. Yeah.
So maybe what I'm saying is that maybe there's an argument that a lot more is autopilot than you think, because because a lot of conscious thought is just rationalizing after the event. Yeah.
But I think that's why it's important, like, assuming that we do believe in some sort of free will in terms of just like, I am making decisions. That's why it's important to practice mindfulness and possibly meditation, so that you can be aware if you are starting to react to things rather than actually making a conscious choice, and noticing that, and noticing if you want to change that or not. So then that way, if things are a little bit like not ideal for whatever reason, whether that's in your mind or in your body or whatever you want to try and fix, or maybe you always eat bad food, I don't know, like whatever it is, if you start to notice it, then you're more likely to be able to change that. And we know that pathways that the mind takes, not literal thought pathways, I mean like neurons and paths in the mind and in the brain and in the body, once they're used over and over and over again, it becomes easier to go down that path, which means that other paths are harder. So if you are trying to do something brand new with your body that you haven't done for a very long time, you'll find it very difficult. You might even find that the muscles don't want to engage properly because you haven't done that for a long time. And that can be the same with your choices and your mind and your thoughts.
It's just like, I don't know, like when you choose to do, me and you have both chosen careers. Now, how much free will did we have over choosing what we were going to do? We're obviously, in the first place, had either genetic or deep predisposition to be able to or be interested in the things that we ended up doing. We would have been inspired by, you don't wake up one day without knowing what yoga is and decide to be a yoga teacher. You'd have seen yoga happen. I'd have seen comedy happen. Like, I'd have made people laugh. You'd have been able to, I don't know, your journey. But, you know, like, you feel like you've come to the decision, but it might have kind of happened before you know that you've decided that.
Yeah, like, especially, like, say for something like yoga, especially if you start it at a bit of a younger age, you might feel like you're a little bit predisposed to being good at it, especially when you don't really know a whole lot about yoga. You might think it's about being good and bad, at being able to touch your toes.
Yeah, which we've dispelled many times, yes.
And then if you think you're good at it, you might keep doing it. And then that might lead you to explore it more. And then you might do more yoga. And the reason why I got into astronomy was because I was right beside a school that taught astronomy classes and I could literally walk there. So I walked around and did some astronomy classes, and then that led to more.
But again, you wouldn't have learned astronomy if you didn't have some minor interest in it before going,
even
before
the
classes were in. Because if they were teaching, I don't know, snooker, you probably wouldn't have turned up to those classes.
No,
and
I don't think so.
Yeah. If you had some interest in snooker and there happened to be a snooker class next to the yoga, you might think, oh, I'll pop in there one day, you know. But you noticed the astronomy class, so you didn't just wake up one day and decide to get into it.
Yeah.
There was something worked in you, like something was seeded that had to come out.
Seeded, that's a word they use a lot. They call them karmic seeds. You plant them earlier on, either in future lives, if you like that idea, or earlier in your life, and then they come to fruition later in your life, and your karmic seeds decide how you react to things. Okay. So, like, say you go to a yoga class, but then when you leave, you feel horrendous, and you hated it, and you're never going to go back, or you go to a yoga class, and you love it, and you want to do it all the time. That's based on your, you know, what you're predisposed to, what you like, you know, coming to fruition, coming to sprout, if we're using the seed term.
It's previous Kayla planting the seed. Previous Kayla was thinking, I'll get into yoga in the next life. Here's, you know,
yeah, I'll just, there we go.
And so I feel like that you maybe could predict an awful lot. You could maybe predict 99%, but then I don't know how much of the universe is just randomness. Like how much is random events? Like, are there genuine 50-50 coin toss things which nobody has any control over that happen to us? Like, is there an element of...
There must be space for some random chance.
Yeah, I don't know what that constitutes. Because I was thinking, like, we would probably both consider ourselves, you know, lucky to have, you know, found our spouses and stuff. Yeah. But that's luck to have stumbled across that person in that space and time, isn't it? But they both had their reasons for being in the places that we were when we met them. So in some ways that is determinist. That isn't like a complete, that's lucky, but it's still determined, if that makes sense. That's
like
not
the chance was high because of things you've already decided, so the chance was high that you would have met them. Yeah,
because you meet them in a similar situation where you like to meet people that are like you or whatever, but it's not blind luck. They didn't just disapparate because they were trying to escape from another planet and they've just suddenly
appeared in front of your face and then it was love at first sight.
So there's a bit more, maybe that goes on in Star Trek or something, I don't know. They just like, but... you know, like what is actually luck and what is actually... It makes it almost sound romantic in a way, meant to be together and stuff like that. But meant to be together in the most cold, scientific way you can think.
Yeah. It's funny, a TV show that I used to watch a lot of, and by TV show I mean children's cartoon, and it was called Phineas and Ferb. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it because it's really good.
Yeah, if you're under 12.
No, all ages. No, I found it really, really good. But one of the episodes, I think it was their mom's birthday, and they built a supercomputer because his sister's always trying to bust them, to dob them in for all the things they do. They never actually do anything naughty. Like, they're not actually bad. They just do lots of ridiculous things that children probably wouldn't actually do, making crazy machinery and building a roller coaster or whatever, you know, crazy things that kids don't do. But anyway, so they build this supercomputer for their sister so that their mom can see what they've done. Like that's the parameters they put into the computer in a sense. And then this weird day ensues where they, take a bottle of orange hair dye up to the top of a mountain with a balloon and 3 ducks waddle down the road and all these ridiculous things are happening everywhere. And they're told to do this and do these weird things. And then in the end, they like set off a leaf blower with the balloons and the bottle of orange hair dye. And then they run back to the house and then something happens and their mom had tried out a new hair salon. It messed up her hair. And then at the end of the film, like something flies through the air, pops the balloon, the bottle bursts and drops into the tree and dumps onto her head. Then the leaf blower blows into her hair and makes it gorgeous. And then a mirror pops up on a spring and is like, ta-da! And then she sees what they did, which was fix her hair. And then she's like, oh my God, it looks amazing. Oh, I thought it looked so bad back at the hairdressers. Oh, come on, let's get some snacks. But like, in a sense, that computer predicted that if we had put all these things in this position at this place and time, it would all come to a point where this would happen. This ridiculous thing would happen and she would see it. But you wouldn't have been able to do that if you hadn't predicted that she was going to have a bad hair day and go into the backyard and complain about it, Yeah. So I quite like that because that kind of touches on what you're saying. How predictable is it? And then is it not free will because they fixed it, or is it? Or it's good.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, and I'm not arguing, I'm just saying it's an idea. I mean, who cares what I think? I mean, like, I'm no authority, so I can't be uncertain about the existence of God and then go around saying, oh, well, I believe in a determinist universe now because I'll read something else next year that will make me think, oh, well, actually, that's bollocks, isn't it? So,
actually, I've changed my mind. I don't believe this at all.
You should always be completely open to having your minds changed.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to say, this is my philosophy of life and it's set in stone and everything that happens can be sort of seen through this prism and maybe that's comforting and stuff, but I don't want to do that because I'm going to be wrong, and then I'm going to end up being bigoted about something, and then in 30 years' time, I'm going to have the mind of someone that's...
He's so old-fashioned.
Yeah, everything's moved on. So, there we go. Do we end now?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Thanks for listening. Congratulations, you made it to the end, and I'm so proud of you. No, I really hope you enjoyed it. Right, there's no show next week. We're having a week off. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time when we'll be talking about feet, which is a very different subject. So make sure you don't miss it, please subscribe, and as ever you have our permission to share, tell your friends, post about us on social media, whatever you want to do. That sort of thing really, really helps other people to find the show, which is absolutely great. Instagram is at Kayla McCormack Yoga and at @PeterBrush_. Twitter is at Kayla McCormack5 and at Peter_Brush. You know what they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder, so hopefully in 2 weeks' time you'll be absolutely dying for an episode, and we'll see you then.